Battlefield 6 has now slid into slop territory, so I'm basically done with it. But as a parting shot, I'd like to bitch about something that's nagged me about this series for 2 decades. I hate spread in Battlefield. Not enough to make me hate the franchise, but it has nagged at me more and more over the years. Variable spread, combined with aim-down sights, is a supremely awkward pairing because it causes your weapon sights to flagrantly lie to you. Any shooter should have spread, that is, shot dispersion, on weapons, if only to balance them for different ranges rather than realism, though it is realistic depending on the severity. But the dispersion of a gun doesn't change just because you hold down the trigger. What throws you off then is the recoil. There's nothing wrong in principle with having your dispersion, your cone of fire, grow when moving and with each shot. It's just an abstraction of your avatar's inability to control the weapon under sustained fire and can be used to further balance weapons for particular engagement ranges. The problem I have with its use in Battlefield is the interface. Having your cone of fire grow as you fire and move is fine when you can actually see your cone of fire, which you can see while hip firing. But when ADS, your cone of fire is invisible. It exists around your weapon reticle, but you don't know what it is. You literally just have to fire and guess, based on how inconsistent your hits are, how bad the spread is. It looks particularly ridiculous on weapons with low recoil, where you can hold your sights directly on target, yet watch your bullets fly all over the place as if the gun is getting less accurate as you fire, rather than your soldier, who is clearly having no trouble since your sights aren't moving. That disconnect, right there, is what I hate. Not only is the game hiding information I need, but it is directly ignoring my attempt to control the recoil by just making me miss magically anyway because it's decided I've been firing too long. It's a dismissal of the player's own skill, besides just looking ridiculous. The game needs to pick a lane. Either the spread is fixed, like a real gun, and what throws you off target is the recoil, which should be made more intense, or they can keep it the way it is, but discard the aim-down sights mechanic and replace it with a zoom that lets you see targets at range while keeping your crosshair, or ideally a circle, so you know exactly where your cone of fire begins and ends, on screen at all times, so you can always see how inaccurate your fire will be. You know, like in Battlefield 1942 and Vietnam. The franchise had this right in the beginning, though not, I suspect, from any intentional planning, but simply because ADS wasn't standard in first-person shooters at the time. As such, when trends changed and ADS became normalized, Battlefield followed suit. Battlefield 2 thus added ADS, but retained the harsh spread mechanics, which is one of the main reasons the gunplay in that game feels so fucking terrible. Because your weapon sights gave you nowhere near an accurate picture of where your shots would go due to just how bad the spread was. Battlefield 6, by making spread lower across the board than prior entries, has actually made the problem less acute. However, when combined with the lack of recoil on many weapons, it makes the gunplay very beamy and thus mindless. I would rather they just eliminate variable spread altogether and crank up the recoil. But sadly, I don't think this will happen in order to keep the gunplay consistent between multiplayer and RedSec. And beamy gunplay has become normalized in BRs to casualize it, to compensate for everybody being bullet sponges and thus make engaging at range worth a damn. Of course, players are only bullet sponges in BRs do directly casualize the mode to make proper positioning less cutthroat and thus allow lower skilled or unlucky players more opportunity to actually engage in shootouts rather than being gunned down out of nowhere after running around for several minutes looting. Most people who weren't OG BR players from Arma don't find that fun. But honestly, I feel like casualizing BRs like that is kind of missing the point. Now, I could be wrong, but I feel like people would be more interested in cutting down the map size, though not necessarily the player count, and going back to basically a revamp of old school deathmatch, just without any respawns. Cram a bunch of people into an arena, though probably much larger than the ones that people played in 20 years ago. Last man standing wins. Much faster pace, much less downtime, both in-match and inter-match, and the tighter format better justifies high TTK gameplay based on aim consistency and skill at movement. I could just be coping because I want arena shooters to come back, and I've never really cared about battle royales, granted, but I feel like efforts to make the original BR experience casual-friendly simply indicate that what people really want is a modernized deathmatch, not the grand-scale, long-haul, high-stakes battle for survival that Battle Royale originally was.